Are your existing solutions able to take advantage of real threat intelligence? Common solutions like firewalls weren't designed to handle the massive and growing volume of threat indicators. This challenge often results in significant gaps in your protections, even when you think you have it covered. You need to protect yourself by filtering network traffic against unique threat indicators in a way that allows you to act. Polywall by Bandora Systems is the solution that filters over 10 million indicators right out of the box. Developed in partnership with the Department of Defense, Polywall is affordable for companies of all sizes. Get your free trial today at bandorasystems.com. Rapid7 powers the practice of SecOps. Using shared data, analytics, and automated workflows, SecOps unites IT, DevOps, and security teams to make security an outcome of innovation. Rapid7 combines technology, expertise, and advocacy to drive vulnerability management, application security, incident detection, and log management for more than 7,000 organizations worldwide. Power up your SecOps practice with a free trial at rapid7.com/securityweekly.
All right. Well, we're going to get to the innovation updates as we like to talk about it. The reason we do it this way, it's both a little bit of a heritage of when we got started looking at startups and security, but what's also becomes important is it's understanding the trends. It's understanding who's getting funded and why, how things are unfolding, and to get a chance to look at some pretty cool solutions that you may not yet have seen. So that's why we tend to do this. But don't forget about our on-demand material. So you can check that out, which got some of our previously recorded webcasts. And Paul and I have one we recorded, was it last week, Paul? 2 weeks ago? So we've got a whole bunch of stuff that's finding its way there. And it gives you the ability to get really thoughtful points of view from a lot of our partners and sponsors of the program. And that's important because, again, just like we do with everything else here, we make sure that it's on point. It's not a marketing pitch. It's somebody talking to you about the problem and how they solve the problem and why you might want to talk to them. And it's our effort to try to cut through more noise, streamline, get people the things that they want. So that's a lot of what you could check out there. So, Paul, I opened up with what I think is good news, and it's fascinating because even good news in security has to be twisted as bad. Data breaches decline in number. And I left off the back half of that, which says, but billions are still exposed. It's still horrible, even though everything about it says it's good. Why am I putting this here? Well, first of all, there's a couple of key points that came out of it, and I wanted to be able to give that to you, and that to me feels more innovative. Second of all, it could be a sign that, hey, all these companies that we're covering and all these things are actually making a difference. The third thing is, just because things are going good doesn't mean that we're not important, folks. So the role that we play in our organizations is continuing to evolve. It's continuing to its importance is continuing to grow. When I share stuff like this, it doesn't mean that we're not doing a good job or suddenly we're not going to be needed. It means good job. So Q1 2018, 4-year low in terms of the number of actual data breaches, and only 1.4 billion records exposed, which I guess it's a lot, but it's down from 3.4 billion last year, and 1.27 billion of those were the result of fraud. Now, I don't exactly understand what that means was the result of fraud, but it was kind of like that hand wave, like, the reality is we're into the millions in terms of what the records exposed are. Now, what does that actually mean? How many of those records had been previously exposed in some potential way? What's the actual harms that comes from it? And by the way, 1.4 billion records out of how many trillion? Guys, we're doing a great job, and you're doing a great job, and that's really good. Email phishing. Now, this is based on how it was reported, from 31. Or down to 31 from 214 the year before. So, of course, they say, well, I mean, it's great, but maybe it's not great. Maybe, bad stuff is still happening. And maybe, look, it could be a blip, right? We're looking at 1/4 of data over 4 or 5 years of data. But we also saw the rise of cryptocurrencies and crypto mining and crypto jacking. Maybe what we're just seeing is that people are shifting their focus, and the things that we called breaches really not as important. And there's other things that attackers are after. In fact, we've said for years, attackers are after either your system or access to the information, right? They want the system, the CPU, the cycles. And over the last decade, we've kind of backed away from that. So they don't care about that. They just want the info. No, I think they're back to that. I think that's what people are starting to take a look at. So listen, this is good news, and I thought we should start the week and get everybody fired up with some potential good news. Couple mergers that came out. PhishLabs-BrandProtect had a merger. Now, it's a merger, but then if you go dig into it, PhishLabs took on $20 million in funding, $20 million additional like this month, and OPS they bought BrandProtect. Mm-hmm. But they're treating it as a merger. So PhishLabs is actually based here in South Carolina. And their idea, the way that I understand it, they've been doing it today is they try to help people determine and then stop phishing attacks. And Brand Protect does the same thing. It's a Canadian company, does the same sort of thing, but then offers you the ability to help better manage your brand online and deal with those types of reputational issues. And they said, hey, combined, we'll be better. Threat intelligence mitigation services, like it's kind of interesting to me how this gets broken down. They've taken on $31.7 million in funding over 4 rounds. And what I find interesting about this space, Paul, is we've seen a lot of other people doing something similar that have either recently changed names, acquired to get bigger, or they're being acquired by others and kind of turning into features. So if you're doing stuff with phishing today, you're doing stuff with awareness, you're trying to give people that intelligence. You see this as a feature, or do you think that some of these companies are going to be big enough they can stand alone and continue?
I'll go out and say that this represents an emerging category, and I think that we can it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds, but we see social media security companies, we see intelligence security companies. I think they're trying to all tackle a similar problem, that an attacker is trying to impersonate your employees, or an attacker is trying to use social media or parts of your brand with domain names, as we've seen with domain tools as well, as part of the attack against your organization. And there is this new emergence of companies that are trying to help solve this problem or this particular set of problems. I think it'll be interesting to see if we end up with one category or two, and who the category kings will end up being. But I definitely think that this year is a year of emergence in these various categories. I also see a lot more inbound requests for more information on how we combat this level of threat. I think it started out with the flashpoints of the world and understanding that deep web, dark web intelligence. And I think these markets are maturing, and I think that we're going to see continued growth in these areas.
So short run, it turns into a category, and in the long run, we'll wait and see. And either a couple of them grow into big platforms that interact with other stuff because it's nuanced, because they're so good at it, and some I think probably get consumed into others. By the way, right? I mean, that's congratulations for them. Sometimes I get so quick to the analysis, but this is exciting stuff, and it's good for us in our industry. So good job. Avast cut the proposed IPO range. So I think this is interesting on a couple levels, and I tried to push into a little bit more. So if you remember, this is a company, global, well-known, and according to the link I've got there, the Reuters link, they're doing well as a company. A couple years ago, they had plans to go public in the U.S. markets, and then they pulled those plans for a variety of reasons, and then recently said, hey, you know what, we're gonna debut on the FTSE in London, and that's really exciting. What we've seen lately with most security IPOs is that they've cheated up the range, or they've increased, let's be more precise, they've increased the range of the offering for the IPO based on anticipated demand leading up to it. And a lot of them have done really well on their first day of trading. So Avast, interesting enough, said, all right, we're going to cut it. But here's the thing. They're cutting back what they're thinking. They're only selling 25% of the stock. The goal is only to raise $200 million. It creates a market cap of about £2.5 billion. And it would still set the record as the largest ever UK IPO in the tech sector. This is fantastic. And it's another sign of companies, even long-standing established companies, able now to capitalize on that because of the growth and the importance of security. I think it's a fantastic, it's a trend, and I want to see more of it. So I really like it. The only thing I'll say is it's interesting looking at the different exchanges because it's in pence and pounds and also in US dollars. Like, they don't use them interchangeably to the point of being confusing. It's just confusing if you don't commonly do the math in your head. And I don't. SafeBreach. Have you come across SafeBreach, Paul?
Yes. I've. This is a category that I'm tracking more and more closely today. My prediction so far is that it will be a category. I think that, and I don't mean any disrespect, right? But I don't see vendors in this space that have really crossed the chasm into, like, everyone needs some budget for this and it fits in your security architecture. I think there's a smaller percentage of companies that have used this technology to success, that is attack simulation. And I think you're going to see, in my guess, more funding and maybe some acquisitions, although I'm not quite sure who the bigger companies are that are going to acquire this technology and use it the best. I mean, if I were a vulnerability management company, this could be kind of interesting. I think this is something I've always wished was kind of glommed onto vulnerability management, right? Go in and actually attack the systems, do some kind of simulation to prove missing vulnerabilities or identify missing vulnerabilities, feed that back into your vulnerability management program. Of course, a lot of it is also showing shortcomings in your existing security solutions, which is a vulnerability, but not in the like patchable sense that we think of it. I think this market's really interesting. Again, I think you're going to see a ton more funding
you say that, Paul.
and some acquisitions.
I wonder if that becomes one of those barriers. It's that I don't want to know. I don't want to know what's wrong. I don't want to test it too discreetly. And what I mean by that is to too small a level, because what if it tells me I'm not doing the right stuff?
And I mean, I saw that in vulnerability management all the time. People are like, oh, right. I don't want to know about all those vulnerabilities because then I have to go fix them. Like, oh my God, I can't, I don't want to stick. I have slides with, the ostrich or whatever is it an ostrich that sticks their head in the sand? Like, yeah, because that's been an issue in the past. So I think this is a really exciting category, and I'm curious to see what comes next for it.
Well, so SafeBreach, they raised $15 million. It's a Series B. So when we look at a Series B, that should mean, in fact, somebody recently wrote a piece that said, just break it down to their early stage, they're the seed stage, they're figuring it out, they're growing. Okay, cool. This to me tells me that they're still figuring it out. They did a $15 million Series A July 2016, expecting the run rate to go about 2 years. This is the right time. It's $15 million Series B. It didn't get smaller, which is not surprising. It also didn't seem to grow exponentially, and it's right about on that 2-year mark. So everything about this says that it's really good. They say they do simulation and validation. To me, Paul, I think the missing piece on this, or if they do it, that I'd push forward is training. I after observing some of the stuff that the National Guard does in terms of their cyber exercises and the way that they're able to bring the civilian sector together and the commercial sector together, along with law enforcement and the state-run military side of things. If you could create for me training centers and simulations and what we call cyber ranges, I think that was fantastic. So if I've got somebody who's able to do some simulation and can validate some of the controls, if it just influenced my training a little bit, I mean, I guess I could look at how it's working and then use that as training. Wow, like what a difference, I think. So we'll see where it goes. But $34 million over 3 rounds. They seem to be doing great, and I like your assessment of the space. And I think we'll see more of it as it goes forward, especially because we're really getting to that point, Paul, where I don't think we can say to somebody, well, I'm not really sure what's working or not. I haven't really tested my controls. I think we're getting to that point where somebody says, hey, did your controls work the right way or not? All right, so Red Canary, $6.3 million in equity. So here's some details on them, because I got some thoughts on this, and I'm kind of curious where you go. So first of all, we did an episode with Brian Baer. This is episode 14. It's very early in our process. I still remember it was a great interview, great discussion of what it was like. And you can go check out that interview that we did at the beginning of this. They've taken on $14.9 million in funding over 3 rounds. Their Series A was a $6.2 million Series A, July 2016. So taking on equity at this point tends to suggest that, in fact, I looked at their SEC filing. It's just operating cash. They needed to keep going. I think, so there's a couple of things. They did the atomic framework, right? Red Canary.
Atomic Red Team.
Thanks. And I was going to say, I know we did a webinar on it.
Yeah, we did a webcast with them on it. Yep.
And we've talked about all these other ways to start to take a look at your endpoints and to figure it out. We also saw Carbon Black IPO in the last couple of weeks. We know the endpoint space is hot and hotly contested. And I think it's smart for Red Canary to say, okay, we're going to show people how to better test, and we're going to show them what we're able to do. But I also think it's a highly competitive space. So to me, a $6.3 million equity round at about the 2-year point on their Series A kind of says, all right, we need to keep spinning here to figure it out. And either we're going to see that they found a gear and they're good to go, and this is what they needed as a lifeline to do it, or they're going to start looking for somebody to combine with, or however that tends to work out. That's kind of my take on it. I have no insight. Like, I didn't reach out to Brian. I didn't reach out to anybody. This is just me trying to take a look at that and how these things seem to matter. But here's the thing. That's not a small amount of money. Like, that's not – I don't see this as a negative. It's just more an understanding of where they're at in the process and what opportunities they have to go forward. Because for somebody to write a check like this, they see value. And so that's equally interesting to me, right? There's a validation. It's just maybe they need a little bit more time to figure it out. What's your take on it based on your experience in the space?
I think it's obviously a good thing for Red Canary, and I think it's kind of there's so many different aspects to the endpoint security, and that it'll be interesting to see how the categories kind of play out, right? Like, they list their competition as the big players: Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, Cylance. but I feel like that they've just got a different point of view on the problem, and it'll be interesting if they can create their own category. I think going directly against, those bigger players on the endpoint security side is challenging. I think there's some companies that are up to it, but I think there's also an opportunity to create your own category or subcategory and still be very successful.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. One of the things I learned from you, and we recently did a whole bit on EDR, is that we're kind of seen as a little bit, right? Like you might be really good at the endpoint and therefore the detection part. You might be really good at the response part. You might be really good at the content. Like it's not so simple anymore to just go, what'd you do for endpoint? Like there's more questions that have to be asked, and there's more ways to take a look at it. So, and like I said, I like their approach of, hey, let me teach you how to do it better. Let me teach you how to test it. Let me show you how this works. So, this is, I view this as a success for them, and we'll kind of see where that goes. That was it. Stuff moving in the space. There's still IPOs, there's acquisitions and mergers, there's companies getting funded. It's a good time to be in security. So